good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar as part of our consultation. And this consultation is on community benefits for electricity transmission network infrastructure. As I say, it's our first webinar, so when we were testing, we saw there could be potentially like a 10 or 20-second lag between myself speaking and it coming to you. So if you ask a question and I've taken a bit of time to get to it, that's probably why. So yeah, just bear with us if there's any sort of technical difficulties. But thank you for coming and thank you for engaging with our consultation. The purpose of holding these webinars is to hear initial views from stakeholders like yourselves, and see if we can answer any questions which might have arisen, and provide some clarity if there's any confusion about anything that we're talking about. So in terms of what we're doing today, first off, start off with introductions. My name is Alexandra Moore, and I'm at the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. I've also got my colleague Matt Chatfield, who you can't see his face, but his voice will appear at some point when we go to a Q&A at the end of the session. And I've also got my colleague Holly Jeffers in the room here too, as well, so you might hear her voice at some point. So I'm going to go to the agenda and sort of talk about how the session is going to run. You can all see that. So introductions, we've started with that, and we're going to then go on to talk about what we're trying to achieve with this what we're trying to achieve in part of this consultation. So how we're trying to achieve building a transmission network for the future. We'll also discuss provide an overview of the consultation document and the next steps. And we'll finish with a Q&A. So for the Q&A aspect, as you will see, we've got this live Q&A panel at the side of your screen at the moment. So you can submit questions while I'm speaking, and I will answer those at the end of the session. So Matt's going to try and collate them by theme if there's questions for a similar theme. However, if you feel that you wanted your that you felt your question was a bit different, maybe from one that had been grouped with, please do raise it again, and we will endeavour to answer it separately. Also to note that within the Q&A function, there is a function to ask a question anonymously. So you are you're able to use anonymous if you like, but just to make you aware that we want to use your feedback and your questions to help inform this work, and so we wanted to record some of the responses that we get. When we're recording these, it's always useful to know sort of what organisation you're from, if you're an individual, that sort of thing. So that's always helpful for that. But obviously, if you'd like to submit a question anonymously, you are absolutely free to do so, that's no problem. So, as you'll see there, we've also got a few timings. So, we've got about 5 minutes for this introduction. I think I've probably just about managed that. And then it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes to cover the overview, and then we've got a full 30 minutes for the Q&A if we need it. So, let's get cracking on the beginning. And yes, just again, if you've got questions, just please do ask them as we go through, and then we'll pick them up at the end. So I wanted to sort of highlight the government ambitions. So obviously we've got a government ambition of meeting net zero by 2050, but we've also got targets to fully decarbonise the electricity system by 2035 and have up to 50 gigawatts of offshore wind as well. And you'll see on the screen, we've got some other targets that we are trying to meet. We've also had to think about the energy security aspects. So, of course, with the war in Ukraine, this highlighted the how cost of energy can fluctuate, and sort of demonstrated the need for having greater energy security, and how, as part of that, that will help to meet our targets. As you will have seen, when we launched the consultation last week, we also launched it alongside the Powering Up Britain plan, and hopefully you should be able to click on the link and go through to the on the presentation, and you should be able to read what's in there, but it details how the government is planning to deliver affordable, homegrown and clean energy more broadly. How are we trying to achieve these targets? We how are we trying to achieve these targets? We want to make sure that we can support the homegrown energy that's coming onto the grid and meet this rapid demand, and accelerate network build. That's something within there's something we committed to do, part of the British Energy Security Strategy, which was released this time last year. And as I said, the Power Up Britain has set out our approach as well to meeting these targets. We are trying to ensure that we can deliver more coordinated reinforcement, and we see that through things such as the holistic network design. But this will also mean that we need new infrastructure on land, and this is being reduced where possible. Wanted to make clear that communities can already have a say about infrastructure build through the planning system, and also to know that community benefits would sit outside of the planning system. So what we're consulting on today would sit outside of the planning system. But we do recognise that we still need to build new infrastructure to meet demand, and we understand that some infrastructure build will be necessary. We also want to recognise that communities will play an important role in this work, and it's only right that they should be recognised with this through such schemes as community benefits, for example. And this is why we're holding this consultation, and this is why we're speaking to you today. And as I've sort of highlighted there, community benefits is part of a wider package of work that we are trying to do to ensure we can accelerate network build. So I will move on to the next one. So going into more detail about our consultation and what we've included within it. Just one second. Right. So within our proposed approach, hopefully those who've been able to read the consultation already will see that we have looked to follow a voluntary approach, because it allows flexibility for the community to decide what they should have in their area. We want to recognise that not all communities are the same, they're all the same, so we want to make sure there is that flexibility. And we found from previous examples, when we were looking at community benefit packages and what's been carried out previously, that this voluntary approach seemed to be the most successful. We also have seen with community benefit packages that have been carried out before, these have been only carried out in certain areas and only available in certain places. So in creating the guides, we hope that we can create some consistency in approach for community benefits as well, and this can be, so we do believe this can be achieved through this voluntary approach. In terms of, so this is sort of like the reasons why we've gone for voluntary. However, we do understand that some people might think this is maybe perhaps needs to be mandatory, and that's something that we would keep under review once the voluntary guidance is out there and being used. And so if there is a need for mandatory in the future, we can go back and look at that again. So it's not completely off the table. And there's a question within the consultation document if you want to feed into that as well. Okay. So I wanted to just cover off briefly the sort of infrastructure that we are covering within, that we propose to cover within the guidance. So we're focusing on transmission network infrastructure. So I wanted to provide a definition. So as I understand, and not everybody will be as familiar with this sort of infrastructure. So transmission infrastructure is broadly defined as long distance transfer of electricity at voltages of 132 kV and above, and these are carried on overhead lines, but we've also listed there the other infrastructure which is associated with it. We also want to make it clear that we are including onshore electricity transmission network infrastructure, which is associated with offshore wind and interconnectors. So we wanted to include this because, as you will be aware, offshore infrastructure will need to connect onto the shore, and a lot of these connections will probably look very similar to that of what is considered onshore infrastructure, and they could have a similar impact. So we want to make sure that we have reflected that within within this work. So I will just move on to this one. So scope. As I said, we intend this guidance to cover onshore transmission network infrastructure and onshore infrastructure related to offshore infrastructure in GB. That's quite a hard sentence to say quickly. We have focused the proposal state on individual projects, so the guidance will be developed as quickly as possible and utilised for as many projects as possible as well. We also believe this is what the fairest approach as well, as a lot of infrastructure can look the same and have similar impacts on communities. Also want to make clear that we are not covering distribution infrastructure within this consultation. This is because, as I sort of pointed out at the beginning, we need to make sure that this homegrown energy can connect, and that's all going to connect, well, for the most part, on the transmission system. That's why we wanted this focus. He also wanted to make you aware that speaking with the devolved administrations, such as the Scottish Government, and they've been updating their documents, Good Practice Principles for Community Benefits from Offshore Renewable Energy Developments. So we just wanted to make you aware that we will continue to work closely with them to consider potential interactions and cross impacts between our two guidance documents. Right, so the next slide is proposed guidance. So this is just really us setting out, and this is what we've set out in the consultation, what we expect the guidance to cover. So we propose the guidance covers eligibility, consultation and engagement, governance and delivery, as well as setting out recommended level of funding. The aim of this document is to provide communities with the knowledge of what should be expected from community benefit packages they are offered by developers. So eligibility, we feel, as we stated previously, we want this to be flexible, as every community is unique, and it's hard to set a strict definition on what community is, and the guidance would need to meet the needs of the particular area. We've also looking at engagement and how that could include a set of principles, as well as roles and expectations for the developer. Delivering governance could also provide guidance on how schemes can be, what schemes would look like and what the options available could be, and that would sort of help to minimise that complexity for communities themselves having to manage that relationship with developers. We've also think having a recommended level of funding would be useful to have within the guidance, and how this is to be determined. There's a question on this within the consultation. So we have, this could be looking at percentage of cost of a project, or we could have a set level for different types of infrastructure. So these are sort of the options that we would be exploring within the consultation. So having set this out clearly with the guidance, we believe it would create a useful framework to be used by both communities and industry on what is expected. So I hope that's sort of given a clear overview of what we intend the guidance to look like. In terms of benefit schemes, the guidance has focused on looking at a benefit scheme which could offer both direct payments and wider community benefits as options for payment. So a community-led benefit could include a new low-carbon bus route, for example, but it would really be something for the community to decide how they would use it. And direct payments would be paid to the individual. And so again, this allows this choice for communities to decide what best suits them. Also, I want to make clear here, as we've stated on the slide, that we have not included bill discounts or shared ownership schemes as options for community benefits. This is because of the complexity sort of associated with delivering this for these sorts of schemes. But again, we have a question on this within the consultation, and we'd be keen to hear your views on that. Great. So, slide. That's funding. So, as sort of highlighted, previous community benefit schemes have been allocated on a voluntary basis, but the need to build this infrastructure, as we said, to meet the targets which I first covered at the beginning of the presentation, at an accelerated pace. This presents a need to ensure that community benefits are consistent and fair for all. This, of course, will come with cost implication on consumer bills, and this is because of how the building of infrastructure, network infrastructure, is currently funded in GB, and that's sort of, and you can see this within how the electricity bill is broken down within the within this slide. We believe that savings that are made overall will sort of give a wider benefit. So reducing network constraint costs will should produce savings on bills in the long term, and that would help to justify this spend. We also want to make clear that we're not pursuing regional funding for this guidance, but again, happy to sort of to hear any views on the consultation responses. So this is so this is sort of like our the starting view of how it would be funded, and that brings me to our next steps. So just a few bits about the consultation. So our consultation will be closing at quarter to midnight on the 25th of May. Once the consultation is closed, we will issue a government response on our final decision and publishing guidance by the end of the year. We've also been working with some consultants, so Secret Locality, who will be delivering engagement events over the next few months. And we're also planning to seek views on communities through social research. And I think that's just about everything. You can also see on the screen I've added in our contact details, so that's cbnetworks@bayes.gov.uk. So this is an email inbox that you can send any questions or any queries, and we can this goes to a wider amount of people in the team, so we can all answer any questions you may have. You should also be able to use that hyperlink to reach the consultation as well, if you'd wish to. So I think that is everything for my slides. I've seen some questions trickling in. So Matt, I don't know if you wanted to tell me.
Yeah, so we've had quite a few questions come in. I think most of them have been posted anonymously, so I'll just go ahead and read them out. So the first one is, how can individuals engage with the consultation who have not got access to technology such as social media and MS Teams?
Mm-hmm. So that's a very good point, thank you. So you are able to submit a response to the consultation via post. So that's I know that option's available and that's a way to access it. But if there's something you want to discuss further, please do let us know. I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Alex. And then following on from that one, someone would like to know, as there are many technical terms in the presentation which are quite hard to understand, what could be done to ensure the presentation is in plain English and accessible to the layperson.
I'm just trying to find that question. Sorry, I do apologise if we used too many technical terms. If you could perhaps sort of let me know what those terms were, and I'm very happy to explain them. It might have been some of the publications that we were talking about. But within the consultation, we have explained every acronym and anything like that. So if you do have any further questions on any of the on anything, please do email the cbnetworks@bayes.gov.uk. We'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Alex. So we've got another question, which is, I'm concerned to hear acceleration in the title of this consultation and for infrastructure build. What has happened to National Grid ESO's review of the infrastructure approach?
I'm afraid I'm not too close to that one.
Hi, hopefully, I don't know, hopefully people can see me. Yeah, so I think obviously this doesn't affect, this consultation in our work on community benefits doesn't affect the role that National Grid ESO play in the network and the energy system. I think we sort of Alex set it out earlier, but we're really keen that we do need to accelerate network infrastructure to get us to net zero. So as Alex said, we've got a lot of targets, and at the moment, we've got an unprecedented amount of network infrastructure needed. So we are going to need to build that faster. So that's why that word acceleration is in there, to make sure that we can meet our targets, that we can get us to net zero, that we can support energy security. So that's kind of quite separate to the role of the ESO and National Grid. But again, if people have concerns or feel like they want to flag that, then please do in your responses to the consultation.
Great, thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Holly. And then we've also got a question on the holistic network design, which is, why was it developed in isolation of the community input and consultation, which I believe Holly will be responding to.
Yeah, so again, that's something slightly outside of this community benefits consultation, but what I will say is the holistic network design is something that has kind of been developed, but all of those network projects will have to go through the normal planning process for those kind of projects. So there will still be a part where kind of through legislation, developers still have to engage with communities as they go through the process to get those projects delivered. So again, I think Alex set out earlier, this work is slightly different than that, because those projects will always have to engage with communities to move through the planning system, whereas this is slightly separate, looking at how we can kind of support those communities that are kind of reward them in getting us to net zero.
Thank you, Holly. So then we've got a bunch of questions which are around the environmental impacts, which I'll group together. So one of them says, energy security and net zero all sounds great, but destroying the natural environment, for example, in East Anglia, to achieve this is not acceptable, and that there's a disproportionate impact on those closest to the infrastructure. Someone also raised the point that people move to the countryside to escape industrialisation, and that building infrastructure near a property can devalue it by up to 50%, which can cause a lot of things such as mental health issues, which aren't going to be solved by the scheme, and also the fact that there's nothing being talked about how projects can be done with more synergy with the environment.
So yes, just to make clear with this consultation, we are saying that this is our consultation with community benefits would be separate from the planning system, and communities are able, through the planning system, able to dispute a plan development, and that community benefits would sit outside of this planning process. In terms of environmental environmental concerns, that's something within community benefits you could look at. We've put in the options that you community benefit could look at environment, looking at improving the natural environment, and there could be some schemes put in place through community benefits. I don't know if there's anything to add.
I don't think so. I think, again, the whole planning process should look at the environmental impacts of the project, and that again is separate to this. I see there are other comments about East Anglia, and I hope people understand that in terms of like strategic network planning, this is slightly different to that. So whilst people can kind of air their views, they're not things that we could really discuss in great detail here. But I would encourage people, if they have issues with East Anglia and the projects in that area, to engage with the developers about that, because the developers are ultimately the ones that are kind of going to be developing those projects, not us in this instance.
Thank you, Helen. Were there any more questions, Matt?
Yeah, so we've had, I think, 2 more come in. One of the questions is from Duncan Law from Community Energy England, who says they're fully in support of upgrading the transmission networks, but wants to know if we're liaising internally on the community generation assets, such as wind and solar, which are necessary to the localization of the system, which could then in turn reduce the need for transmission reinforcement.
So as part of our consultation, we've been, and sort of developing consultation, we've been speaking to colleagues on who look after different technologies and seeing how any learning can come from them, and making sure that everyone's informed about what we're doing. So we're making sure that we talk to lots of people, but I'm very happy to, if you've got any further questions on this or would like to see any further engagement, please do get in touch via the email address. I'd be very happy to speak to you.
Okay, thanks, Alex. And then I think we've just got one more for now, which may have just come in as a response to one of your previous answers. But they say National Grid have proven with multiple reports that the cheapest and most effective way to deliver net zero in the East Anglia region is to implement an offshore grid, but that this is essentially being ignored by our department, and it's the cause of East Anglia. It's the cause of the East Anglia requirements and the community benefits ask. So the question at the end is, why will the offshore grid, which had been proven by 3 separate ESO reviews, not be looked at properly?
I think colleagues have answered this question, but just to say that, again, just to reiterate, the community benefits in our consultation with this outside the planning system, and as Willie said, a lot of these questions can be directed to the developer in place to have this discussion with them.
Yeah, I'll just add to that I'd be interested to, we would be interested to see anything that says that an offshore grid is cheaper. I think an offshore grid is actually significantly more expensive, which would then be an expense that would be passed on to consumers, which is also potentially why National Grid have not made that decision. But that would be for you to speak to them about. But yeah, again, if these points link to anything you want to say in response to the questions in the consultation, then please do flag them.
Thank you. We've just had a few more come through. I think this is more of a follow-up statement from Duncan, whose experience from voluntary benefit schemes for community benefits with onshore wind in Scotland. Recommended benefit was £5,000 per megawatt installed, and the actual amount is nearer to £1,200, and that there's a race to the bottom with what they can get away with. Community wind in Scotland delivers 34 times the community benefits of commercial projects, yet there is little support for community energy. So I think that's probably in follow up to also the generation, the local generation point as well. And then we have another question which has just come through anonymously, which is that no actual community benefit payment numbers have been mentioned, and the cost to the bill payer. The infrastructure build that will impact habitats, properties, and well-being on people. which is, I guess more of a statement as well. And then Duncan's also just asked a question, what will prevent developers looking for deprived communities to locate or route near, who will be less vocal in demanding community benefits? This has happened demonstrably with high carbon generation sites.
Thank you, Duncan, for that. And yes, this is this is sort of thing that we'd be really pleased to have in responses to the consultation, and that sort of helps with our evidence base and help us develop a guidance that will make sure that that it is fair for a wide amount of people. But again, very happy if you want to speak through want to speak to us again, do like the CB, you can contact the CB networks at bays.gov.uk, and happy to answer any questions there as well.
Thanks, Alex. I think that's everything for the upfront questions. So we'll just give another, say, 20 or 30 seconds due to the delay, in case anyone wants to ask any more questions, and then we'll work through any that come through.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you.
So we have just had one more question come through, which is, how do you envisage community benefits being separate from the planning system when the delivery of the project is within the planning system? So
it'd be separate because it's this. We want to make sure that this is voluntary, that communities can take it forward if they wish to. They don't have to. They can also a community can also benefit from community benefits, and also we still have the option to reject a project. So yeah, we just want to make sure that it's we will say that it will stay outside of the planning system.
Not a question, but just another observation has come through, that the offshore grid isn't more expensive, and that perhaps we need to review the information again in regards to the ESO reports that have been published. And yeah, in terms of questions, no more have come through. So I think we can wrap up the Q&A there. So thanks everyone for engaging so much with the questions.
Great, thank you so much everyone. And yes, as I said, please do email us if you have anything else you wanted to share, and please do return a response to the consultation. It'll be it is really much appreciated. Great, thank you very much everyone, and have a lovely Easter weekend.